Get ready for part two because the Twins report cards are in for the first quarter. Results could be a lot worse. They could also get a lot better. Who's the teacher's pets and who's in the doghouse? Well, today we're going to find out about the pitchers and the rest of the team. But in a way, it all doesn't matter because everyone still has to get locked on Twins.
You are Locked On Twins, your daily Minnesota Twins podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
There it is, my favorite song. Locked On Twins, we're back. Hello again, everybody. Welcome back to Locked On Twins, your daily go-to source for the top Minnesota Twins insight, discourse, and analysis. I got to slow down. Personally, it's my favorite show of the Imperial Locked On Podcast Network, which, by the way, brings you your team every day. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Don't hit the host, though. We don't deserve that. I'm Dave Brown, an MLB writer who got report cards just like you. I'm also a BBWA member and a Hall of Fame voter. Across the Great Plains of cyberspace is Brandon Warren, who was he gets his report cards every day from the wife at home and the kids and the dog, and they give him A+. You should too. Brandon was a Twins fan who became a Twins writer, and now he's both. You can bury us in Puckett's Pond, I think, at this point. You can. It's because it's really the mud is very easy to, there's no water left, but that's where you're going to put us.
Yeah.
So you can't find us there yet because it dried up, but there's always Access Twins and zone coverage. On the podcast this time is part two of our show about the Twins' first quarter of the season, not the quarter pole. The quarter pole is the last quarter. This is the first quarter, which doesn't really have a name. But it's not quarter pole. Don't call it that. We've looked at the hitters already. Today we're going to look at the pitchers and the coaching staff and the adults above them to give grades to the Twins for 2025 so far after 41 games. I don't think we gave we haven't given an overall grade, and I don't know if we will because I didn't really add this up that way. But we're going to find out who gets ice cream, who gets the iPad taken away. Is this going to be a do as I say, not as I do, mister kind of scenario? I think it might be.
I think the offense, you got to do like a D+ or something like that, like C- at the very best. They've done enough lately to get the team back to where it wants, well, not where it needs to be or wants to be, but in the right direction. But yeah, short of going back and relitigating any of that, a D for the offense is probably about what they deserve.
So we'll start with the pitching, which has been among the best in the league comprehensively. But on an individual basis, I'm giving Joe Ryan. We're going to start with Joe Ryan. An A. He's got the most WAR. He's got the most starts. So he's a little ahead of Pablo Lopez in that sense. But Joe Ryan, despite having a couple of sick episodes, where somebody on the team gave him some kind of disease, I don't know, things spread around the clubhouse. He's just been terrific in his age 29 season. And people have been worried that, well, if the Twins never got it going, if they were going to be losers, that Joe Ryan would be traded at the deadline. I can't imagine that happening now. I hope it never happens. I don't really want the Twins to ever not have Joe Ryan. But he has been you've seen it a little bit every year, a little bit of improvement from him, and he looks even more ace-like or high tier like, not crying tears, but TIERS. I'm just impressed with Joe Ryan every time he goes out.
Yeah, really the only thing you can ding him for is home runs. And even then, they seem to ebb and flow. He's not going to end the year at 1.4 homers per 9 like he is right now. And, I mean, part of the battle, too, is he's a fly ball guy. And so, sometimes those things just, the inflated home run per fly ball rate catches up with you a little bit. But in general, I mean, the ERA is sparkling. He doesn't walk anybody. He strikes people out without throwing the ever-loving crap out of the ball. I think from a pitchability standpoint, it's hard to find anybody going better in the American League than Joe Ryan. His pitches, when they're doing what he wants them to, is as good as anybody else.
And he, it's not as easy as saying this, but, he doesn't throw 97, 98 miles an hour. But because of his arm angle, and the way he releases the ball and the other things that go into making a good pitcher, he gets people out with 92, 93 miles an hour. And it's he's not the only kind of pitcher that does this, but it's just nice to see that it can be done. And I would like to see more pitchers try and learn from Joe Ryan about how to go about things. But then again, maybe he is just working on an innate talent that he has that is different than velocity, but still hard to copy. So
he's a unicorn in so many ways.
Yes. I give Bailey Ober a B. Just because I think there's an A in there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think some of it is a little bit of an incomplete because he's had a couple of starts where he's been sick and they've asked him to do some things out of the ordinary, and he had the one start against against the Cardinals, his first start of the year, that kind of skewed his statistics.
Mm-hmm.
But it happened. So, but I think he could be an A- certainly by the end of the season.
I'm giving him an A- now. In his last 7 starts.
Look at you.
Yeah. Well, 1.98 ERA since the disaster, the misery in Missouri. 1.22 WHIP, 34 to 6 K to BB ratio in 41 innings. And I think maybe what's most impressive to me, 0.66 homers per 9 innings. So while opposing batters have a 272 average against him, and as our friend Jeff Fry laments, nobody hits 300 anymore. 272 is a pretty high batting average to allow. When you don't walk anybody and don't give up home runs, that still results in a 685 OPS against. So 302 on base, 383 slug. Neither of those are particularly worrisome or troublesome by themselves. 1.98 ERA. I'm going A-. I think he has turned his season around in a way that only the most optimistic people could have expected. If you were to say, hey, we just watched him get beat up in St. Louis. What do you expect if we were to circle back here in 6 weeks? What would you think his ERA would look like? I don't think anybody would have guessed 3.50.
I'm not sure how to grade Chris Paddock. I'm not how to grade Scott Paddock, but Chris Paddock, I don't know. Because it's sort of kind of like with Ober. Stats are really skewed from earlier in the season. He's still, but he hasn't pitched enough innings really to make his WAR move. He's got a 0.1 WAR, which is not great. A 4.76 ERA, but it keeps going down. You notice, progressively speaking, Chris Paddock's ERA, has gone from 16 or something to 12 to 8 to 5 to 4, and he's been a godsend. So I'm going to give him a C plus.
I'll go B-. His last 6 starts, 2.51 ERA, 0.99 WHIP, 26 to 10 strikeouts to walks, 4 homers and 32 and a third innings. So maybe not the strikeouts you'd want, but he's not walking anybody, and he's keeping the ball in the park, especially relative to when he gets into trouble. And with that said, so he's allowed a slash of 191, 250, 304, but I don't want to out anybody, but there were kids in my class that would they got a little bit of extra help in school. And so they'd take a test and 1 or 2 of the wrong answers would be crossed out to give them a better chance of a good grade, right? I kind of feel like the Twins are operating like that with Paddock, where it's after 5 innings, bro, we're not doing anything more with you. Now, last time out, he was so good that they kind of had their hands forced. Not that they didn't want to do it, but it's just more along the lines of, listen, we're going to protect you whilst protecting ourselves, whilst leaning a little heavier on the bullpen when you're around, to where I can't give him a better grade than a B-. Did I say B- before? Because I think that's what I said.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's probably not entirely befitting of how well he's pitched of late, but it also goes to show that there are definitely some sort of training wheels on that are protecting him from being overexposed. And that shouldn't shock anybody who's watched a Rocco Baldelli baseball team. So I have no gripes with it. I have no issues with it, but it's hard for me to give him a much better grade than that.
Based on his secondary stats, I had been expecting some regression. That last start, though, where he carried a perfect game into the 7th, I think, was quite a surprise. And, it's hard to remember sometimes, but when he was a rookie, he was hot stuff. And he was like, hey, watch out for this Paddock. He also, I remember there were some caveats. Scouts were like, I don't know about this. And, he's had a lot of injuries since then. So I don't know if it's that the scouts were kind of right or injuries got him or some combination therein. But he's been marvelously used by the pitching staff.
I think there's an archetype there, or an archetype. I don't know if I'm saying it right, of the guys who get enough strikeouts, don't walk anybody, and give up home runs, like a Jose Barrios starter pack. And Barrios at his best will be fairly decent at, but like the whole issue, like Keith Law, a lot of Twins fans didn't like Keith Law saying, well, Barrios is a shortish righty. Is he going to be able to keep the ball in the park? And they also said that about Marcus Stroman, and a big benefit for Stroman was how many grounders he gets. Grounders don't leave the park. So I do think, though, that Paddock kind of drops in that bucket of like maybe like what a Trevor May would have been if he would have started his whole career. Like a guy who can throw, get you innings, pitch pretty well, but is going to be, dusted up by a home run a little more often than you like.
Pablo Lopez gets an A. No. Okay. Well, I was going to do the starters, and then we do the relievers.
We'll finish the rotation, do our break, and then bing, bang, boom.
Bing, bang, boom. Pablo gets an A. He has missed one start because of his hamstring. Not all of his starts have been A starts, if you want to break it down start by start. Like his last one was more like a B minus, and he's had a C in there too. But in other ways, he's been everything you could hope for. And, he started out, remember last two seasons, he was poor in the first half and really came on in the second half. He's not been doing that. They would be really lost if their starting pitching hasn't been as good as it's been. And of course, he is as much of a reason as that for anybody.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at just the raw data, 10 strikeouts per 9, 1.6 walks, 2.77 ERA, his expected ERA, FIP, Sierra, whatever you like, all right there. I think really where he's fallen short, and it's not anything that can't be pitched out of, is a strand rate of 69%. I think the league average is somewhere in the 70s, if I'm not mistaken. And so if he could get a little better at stranding base runners that he allows. And again, when you don't allow that many base runners, maybe that's part of what skews it too, is that, if you allow fewer base runners than your counterparts and a couple more of them score, suddenly you're looking at a higher level than anybody else. But in general, I mean, he's pitching like what I would call a second tier ace, like comfortably an ace, but probably not someone that people are going to bang the drum for to either start the all-star game or be a top 2 or 3 in the Cy Young balloting. And that varies every year. I mean, Kenta Maeda finishing second, he wasn't ever the best pitcher in baseball either. But I think Pablo is comfortably hand the ball to this guy in the playoffs, and you may get 5 or 6 innings, whereas a lot of other guys, it's 3 or 4.
I think we can take our break now because we're going to put Simeon Woods Richardson in the bullpen, where I think he should go. And we'll talk about him when we come back.
Sure thing. All right, but before we get back, we got to tell you about our friends over at Supply House, where you can get the supplies you need from the site made for the skilled trades. That's Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to get your products and order them online. They have an easy-to-use website packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400-plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. And if you need help with an order, Supply House has expert support and industry-leading service, and you'll always get to talk to a real person. And if you're a trade pro looking for an extra edge, they have a free Trade Master program that will offer you exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every single order. Now, thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage, so you should be the next if you're a skilled professional looking for a big edge. Join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM, which is obviously short for Tim Mahoney, Trade Master, and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5, that's Sam Horn 5, for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com.
Locked On Twins has returned for our second segment in our second show about the first quarter of the Twins season, which has been okay.
Yeah.
As it turns out, with a nice flourish at the end, they're over 500. They'll need to do better in the next quarter. I suspect they will, but knock on wood. We're talking pitchers. We have been talking about the rotation. I think Simeon Woods Richardson gets a C because he's done everything that they've wanted him to do pretty much, but there are diminishing returns. He's given up too many hard hit balls. He's putting too many people on base, too many home runs, too high of a slugging percentage. Doesn't go deep enough into games. The typical line on him is something like 4 2/3 innings, 3 runs. It doesn't average out to that, but that seems like 2 runs maybe. I don't know. And sometimes he can be a little better than that. I think the Twins, especially if this is how they're going to hit, not as good as we hoped, need more from that spot in the rotation.
Yeah, it's a C- for me. The FIP, XFIP, and all that aren't very pretty, and just not enough innings per start. Since the start of last season, if I'm remembering correctly, because I pulled the data, he has 22 starts where he hasn't thrown a single pitch in the 6th inning. Where do you think that ranks?
Well, do you mean first or last? But how about, you know what I mean? He's last.
Like, if we were to rank them as too many, yeah, second.
Yes.
And
Who's worse?
Atop that list, I'll give you a hint. He pitched for the ball club that you covered and rooted for.
Oh.
No longer, though.
James Shields. No.
Well, I mean, since the
Eric
start of
Fetty?
No, Garrett Crochet, who is notably was on a specific program, maybe not a program, but a plan, to say for lack of anything else, with the White Sox. So
I would call it a program instead of a plan. A plan sounds like it could be good. A program sounds like it's very general.
Plan sounds like they knew what they were doing. Program sounds like, okay. So obviously, when that's over an extended period of time, which is now a season plus a month, I don't know at what point do you say, okay, maybe this is a bulk man for us, and they don't really need a bulk man. Maybe this is our multi-inning fireman. He's averaging 93.4 on the fastball this year. If you were to dial it back, and again, and not because you don't trust that he has a future in the rotation, but just where he can help you best now. Yeah. I mean, maybe you could touch 95, 96 out of the bullpen as your, who was their multi-inning relief? They don't really use that. I'd say Cole Sands was kind of that guy that they used on the front end of the leverage situations. Again, I don't know how you do this without DFAing / ILing / finding a way to option Alcala, moving SWR to the bullpen as the front guy, and bringing up Zebby or Festa. I don't know how you choose which of those two, but you pick one of them, and that's what I think I would do, and then have the other guy earmarked for if something goes sideways with Chris Paddock or one of the other guys. I mean, we saw it with Joe Ryan last year. We saw it with Pablo Lopez earlier this year, where injuries pop up. And so, I think that would be my path. I'm not ready to DFA Alcala, but there definitely needs to be something. He can't just not pitch. That just does not help anyone. Doesn't help him, doesn't help the Twins, doesn't help anybody. And they're playing 1-run games. They're playing tight games. They need to win these games, so they can't put him out there.
It seems like, I don't know if we're transitioning into Alcala, but it seems like that's something they need to figure out. Yeah. And I think the best thing for SWR is actually going to the minor leagues and starting every 5th or 6th day. I think that's what's best for him. The best thing for the Twins is to have Zebby or Festa in that spot in the rotation, if not a 6-man rotation, and then make up an injury or do something with Alcala to get him to bide his time. I don't think, he in the wash, his stuff comes out as like, why isn't this guy getting anybody out? Yeah. His stuff is still good. He's still throwing hard. His location and his execution is poop, but there's still something there. So I don't think you want to DFA him, but you also can't pitch him.
win a game 10-2 every now and then and let him actually get in. Like,
I mean,
that's the point, is you can't use him. He's unusable with how your team is playing right now, and that's not fair to him, but it's also not fair to the team, and you have to prioritize the team.
they could use some 10-2s, that's for sure. But let's also be realistic, and maybe those aren't happening. I don't know.
I mean, I don't think they can score 10 runs right now. I think 6 and 5 and 4 are the sweet spot.
So Alcala, I'm giving a D. And like I said, I think he needs a reset. There is no injury. They can send him to the minors. We say, this bears repeating, but he needs to agree to go because of his service time. So he's got options, but it's like only like a half an option, because they could send him to AAA, but he's got to be like, yeah, I'll go.
Yeah.
And he might be, he actually could be a guy that could just be one of these relief pitchers that does better in another place the next day. Who knows? The change of scenery kind of thing. I definitely think that they could trade him. I don't know that they would get much for him. So when you talk about DFA, I don't know that it would be a situation where that would end up with him on release waivers. I think it would be
trade.
A trade.
And a guy like the Marlins would want to give you something for, and probably not that much. Maybe their 20th overall prospect or something.
I'm not sure how Ronnie Enriquez is doing.
I think he's been okay. I want to say I haven't looked in a while. I got to remember to look him up, and then Michael Hellman, who I don't think has played for the Cardinals yet either, who are surprisingly hot right now too.
More relief pitchers. There's too many. Let's not talk too much about each guy because they don't deserve it.
Let's take our last little pause here.
I guess we should take our break. Yeah. Break. Locked On Twins is back. We're talking about relief pitchers. I wanted to save the last segment more for the front office because that can really get us going on rants.
Yeah.
But let's just keep piling or running on through with the pitch. Joan Duran, absolute A. He doesn't get my A plus. I think there's one guy who deserves the A plus. We'll get to him. But Duran has been absolutely nails. He's working on additional pitches, and he recognized last year that his fastball in and of itself was a little too hittable, and his other pitches weren't supporting it enough to make him the dominant reliever that he was in previous seasons. But he is, I would say, they're probably their likeliest all-star so far. Like certainly before the winning streak, there wasn't really anybody else where you go, nothing against the seasons that like Buxton and Bader have had, or even Lopez and Ryan. Mm-hmm. But, you really have to be on a heater to be a starting pitcher in the all-star game. You would be, those ERAs are like 1 something and low 2s. And the Twins don't necessarily have that going for them. Duran, I think, has been their likeliest all-star so far just because he's pitched well and he's the guy at the end of the game.
Yeah, I mean, and each of the other relievers has been good, but maybe has something that's not quite where it needs to be. Cole Sands has a good ERA, but isn't striking anybody out. Louis Varland's still getting bit a little bit by the home run bug. And Griffin Jacks has everything looking great except his ERA because his home run rate's up a little bit. But he's pitching as you would hope. It's just the results aren't quite there yet. He deflected that ball into the outfield, and the Giants tied the game against him, which was basically the only blemish on the homestand for the entire bullpen. So,
and the totality of Griffin Jacks' stats lately has been good. Like he's been on a good roll, and he's not going to go the entire season without giving up a run. So
I'll go with A- for Duran. Griffin Jacks, I'll give a B. Louis Varland, I'll give a B+. Topa, I'll give a B+. Sands, I'll give a B-. And, Brock Stewart, I'd just have to say incomplete. It just hasn't been enough to really know for sure. And I didn't want to steal your thunder on the other guy that you were going to mention.
Yeah, I gave enough signs that you knew who it was. But, yeah, our grades are similar there. I'm going with a B for Griffin Jacks, an A- for Lou Varland, a B for Cole Sands. I'm not worried about Cole Sands, but he's kind of got a Duran thing from last year going on where he's a little too hittable. and not as dominant as he was. But I also think he's a guy that they can work around that, and he can work around it too. And
fifth reliever, sixth reliever, he's perfectly fine.
True, he is. But I also, if something bad, God forbid, something bad happens to somebody at the back of the bullpen, Cole Sands might need to get saves. So I want him to be better.
He's gonna get saved.
Yeah, right. Topa B. Brock Stewart probably incomplete, but I'll give him a B just to be encouraging. He's looked better. He's gotten a little better as he started out rough. I don't know if he completed enough time in his rehab assignment, sort of like Royce Lewis, to get how you want him. So
they're not dropping him in the deep end either, which good for him.
True.
And,
Topa has been good. He's been really good. I've been worried because his velocity isn't as high as it was when he had his best season 2 years ago with the Mariners.
It's not as bad as Fangraphs has. They don't even have an average velocity for his fastball, probably because he doesn't throw a four-seam traditional. But like they list all the velocities, and only two Twins don't have velocities, and it's him and Cody Funder down under. Even Willie Castro has a velocity, and it's 54.6, so he's not going to get pulled over on the old Interstate 94 heading to the ballpark.
This is Topa who they don't give a velocity on Topa?
It's probably because he throws a sinker instead of a true four-seam fastball or something.
Well, I've seen velocities on sinkers. They should not be discriminating against Topa.
Right. That's true.
But the person on the Twins team who has done the best for their job relative to what it is Danny Coulombe.
Easily.
He's not given up a run yet. He's nails against lefties. He's really good against righties.
Staff. He's the baiter of the pitching staff.
Yeah, with no mistakes.
Right.
With a perfect season so far, pretty much. The closest thing to it. But really good. I guess we can get into the front office too. I mean, Danny Coulombe gets an A+. Well,
Can I explain what he reminds me of? When you buy a new baseball video game and you're learning the timing of your hitting, I feel like when he releases the ball, then the ball comes out like another half second later. Like the deception in his release, and you can't differentiate. Like he obviously doesn't have a big fastball, 90.6 average. It's about Bailey Ober-esque. From the left side, that probably does play up a little bit, but he doesn't have Ober's extension. But it's like it's like when you're watching one of those pitching machines, like they have, I don't remember what they're called, but you watch the pitcher wind up and then all of a sudden the ball comes out of the hole and you're like trying to sync it up and it's hard to do. That's taking a plate appearance against Danny Coulombe right now. There's no way to be prepared for whatever he's going to throw at you because he's so deceptive.
A little bit of a lefty version of Joe Ryan in that respect. That
sure.
The how the ball comes out in its deception is a big reason why he's able to be successful. Maybe with not, like you said, the biggest fastball ever, but he doesn't necessarily need it. And he's got a bunch of other pitches too. He's got kind of a wide variety, and he's not afraid to throw 5 or 6 pitches. Mm-hmm. And some of them are variations on fastballs or whatever. He's got a cutter, and he's got a 4-seamer and a 2-seamer, and maybe something else. But I've just been, and I'm hoping that he's going to be able to pitch 50 or 60 innings because it's only happened twice in his career. And it did happen 2 years ago, so it hasn't been that long. But, I just worry about that part of it. And I'm glad they're starting. Festa and Zebi are going to be needed because the season's going to get longer and more laborious, and they're going to need Coulombe at the end. Hopefully they don't have to use him too much.
Ride it until you can get Connor Prelup up here. If
yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that's risky. I think having both of them in the bullpen at the same time is really what you want in the playoffs.
Sure.
So, Connor Prelup is around, but and you never know with rookies like how they're going to react. There's a learning curve. So sure. I worry about that. But Coulombe and is there anybody else that we need to talk about in the bullpen? No,
I don't think we need to talk much about Darren McCocken, but he was pretty good for that 5 1/3 inning stretch.
He was. Is he still in the organization?
Yeah, he stayed. He stayed after the outright, which I was shocked that nobody claimed him, even just for 5 1/3 innings.
Right.
I don't know.
Maybe the league screwed up.
I don't know. not certain how he's pitched at St. Paul. I'm pulling that up right now, but
and I'll use the Coulomb.
He's been fine at St. Paul, 20 innings, 2.25 ERA.
Mm-hmm. The Coulomb edition, the Ty France edition, the and the Bader edition. As far as that goes, as far as the players that the ownership allowed, financially speaking, the front office to get, A+.
Yep.
Those guys are huge. They would be dead without those guys. They would not be in playoff contention, and they would not be heading toward it without those three players. As much as last season, I mean, they got mixed reviews last year for Carlos Santana, obviously a great addition, but the other guys that they added, Ogert did not work out, and Margot was a disaster. This year, Falvey and Zoll hit home runs with those guys. I look at where else, what else could they have done? And it would have been more radical things. It would have been something like trading Trevor Larnach. It would have been something like getting another shortstop to back up someone who could play for Correa. It would have been having another second baseman there, so they didn't have to go to Edouard Julien again.
Well, we were campaigning for Paul DeYoung, who's not hitting. Luis Urias, who I think actually is hitting.
Yeah, he's doing fine.
And then Jose Iglesias, who for vibes reasons would have been a good pickup. He's not hitting either. So I mean,
yeah, but that's with the stipulations, financial stipulations coming from ownership. Which
Urias is hitting though. He's 259, 347, 481. He
would have been helpful. He would have been helpful. Yeah. I can't criticize Falvey and Zoll too much because Zod, because of the limitations put on them by ownership, whether it be don't add more payroll or we don't know if we're going to own the team the rest of this season, so we're not going to sign off on things. We don't want to incur more debt. I don't know what they told him or how they put it, but it's again a malpractice. Fans who don't want to watch the team because of how ownership has run things as far as TV, as far as what they allow the front office to do. I get it. You can only vote with your feet. Stay away, don't watch, complain. Mm-hmm. I hear you, because from the top down, it has not been great leadership. And it is a malpractice. It is a sin what they're doing, because this team can win.
Well,
and this should not be the fourth best team. And granted, they haven't played to their capabilities what they have, but they also have not gotten the support from on high to do so.
It's telling that they spent, what was it, $12 million on Bader, Coulomb, and France, like, and we considered that a surprise. We considered it a surprise that
I didn't think they were going to do it.
Right. And like we were talking about, they may not be able to afford DeYoung, Urias, Iglesias. Well,
at some point they didn't. They I think another season they probably would have afforded them. Or maybe that wouldn't have worked out. But
for $3.5 million a month earlier, until he got desperate and they got desperate. It certainly didn't help that Alex Kirilloff up and retired. But desperate times, desperate measures. It's panned out, but in spite of itself in a lot of ways.
Coaching staff. I'm probably too much of a Rocco apologist. There have been things that he's done that I know, but that I don't agree with, like tactical moves or whatever. Mm-hmm. And maybe some other things too. But as far as like the most important thing that a manager does, keeping the players as confident and as ready and as in position to do their best as they can be. He's an A manager. You're not going to do better.
Right.
That for those things, those most important things, there have been other seasons. Somebody pointed out, people were yelling at each other on Twitter about how he goes to the bullpen too fast or too often. 2 years ago, the Twins, I believe, Did they lead the league in starting pitcher innings? Does that
yeah. Would have been the Sonny Gray year, right? The last Sonny Gray
23?
season.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when the conditions are right, he'll do it.
Yeah. How dumb would
It's
it have
not
been?
some kind of philosophy.
Yeah. How dumb is it if you let Dylan Bundy and Chris Archer pitch just because you got to save the bullpen? Yeah, got to get the pitcher the win. Well, guess what? If the team loses, no pitcher on your team wins. I don't care if you go 4 2/3 and the bases are loaded and you're up 5-1. You go get the starter. It's the shepherd's hook. That's what smart, forward-thinking managers do. You don't care about the pitcher win. The team wins. The pitcher is along for the ride. They may drive the bus, but they're along for the ride.
I have some nits to pick with some I wish Mackey would work his wizardry with Alcala, but I don't know. Maybe there isn't
maybe he's working
something
on
to
that
do.
now. That's the maybe they're resetting him. Maybe they're soft rebooting him. Sometimes that happens, and if you can't send him down, you sit him down.
Well, if he's got a soft booty, I don't know how much that's going to help him pitch, Brandon. But hitting. I am not a person that likes to say people should be threatened with their jobs because it's happened to me. But I still don't know exactly what it is that the new hitting coaches are doing to make the team better. Maybe it's just going to take more time. Maybe I should be patient. I don't know. But I look at the hitting coach they had and the success that Carlos Correa had with him, and I look at the hitting coach that they have now and the success that he doesn't have, and maybe Carlos just has to put on the big boy pants and hit. But I know that's easier said than done. I just think that hopefully there's a transition here where things are getting better, and we just don't see it yet, and it'll be better in July than it is in May. That's the only thing I can say about that. Yeah. We need to see more out of the offense because there's more there. It doesn't have to be 100 percentile more, but it has to be something more than they're giving. And hopefully they're behind the scenes that are working on it. Otherwise, the rest of the coaching staff, I don't know, C.
Yeah, I mean, I would assume that they're all working on that, but the lack of results is troubling. Jose Miranda not doing anything, Edouard Julien not really doing anything. Were they fool's gold or are they underperforming or some combination of the two? I really don't know.
Correa pointed out that it's in April. He pointed out that there's good conversations happening and we're getting better communication every day. And so, okay, you sort of hope that the communication would have been in place already before opening day, but if we're still working on that, maybe we just need to be, all we can do is be patient. I don't know. Do I have an out to read?
Same as last.
All right. We want to thank you for making Locked On Twins your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the all-new Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night, all season long. What a deal. Get local analysis on a national scale. And please find MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. And we thank you for listening to this one. For Brandon Warren, I'm Dave Brown, wishing you all a very pleasant good evening, saying we will Alexei Casilla tomorrow night.